everybody. It's Irene Lim from Dovetail Coaching Solutions. Today, we've got a guest with us, and his name is Paul Ward. Now, Paul is based in the UK, and he and I have been friends for about 2 years since we did our training together as NLP trainers. And Paul is actually the founder and director of Blacktop Coaching. His company provides services for personal development, whereby he coaches both businesses as well as individuals. Paul has an extensive background in management, both in the role and on an advisory basis. Tell me correct me if I'm wrong. His coaching is actually a no-nonsense basis coaching. So I'll leave it to Paul to elaborate further on what he does.
Thank you, Irene. And it's very nice to be here talking to you, as always. But yes, you pretty much summed up what I do right now. So a mixture of executive coaching, life coaching, personal development coaching, along with training, as you rightly said, from 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, that we first met on our trainer course in Thailand for our NLP training. And I do a lot of NLP training here in the UK as part of my business. So yeah, and my background, as you mentioned, was predominantly in retail, working in retail, in management, building up lots of experience of working with a wide range of people, and also serving a wide range of people in the UK. Serving in retail environment, you do experience all different forms of life, and learn how to communicate at different levels. So it's pretty much what led me to coaching and to where I am now.
So tell me how, or let the listeners know, how is your coaching style? How do you actually do your coaching?
It's something that's evolved over time. So I've been full-time coaching for 3 or 4 years now. And I had that moment at the beginning of my coaching career where I felt I should have a structure, a plan in place in which I would take my clients. And I did that early thing of writing down questions before I went in with a client and realized I didn't ask any of those questions. And that kind of fed what is now my style, which is the client leads, and whatever the client wants to talk about will take us to where we need to be. So my style is very much build rapport, understand the needs of the client. Often that takes a bit of conversation, because of course they tell you what they feel is going to be the thing that they need, but through listening to their language and the slightly deeper structure behind it, we discover that actually there's some other blocks there that need to be worked upon. So I allow my clients to work through that in the first instance, so then we can decide what path to take, as opposed to having a set out plan that I will do certain techniques or use certain tools. So it's quite a flexible approach, but I guess to sum it up, yeah, client-led, definitely, without a doubt.
Because today, as it is client-led, and today we are going to be talking about how people can overcome their subconscious blocks. Now, you and I both trained to be trainers 2 years ago in Thailand, and we both have gone through our personal challenges in a way. You have gone through yours personal, and so have I. And obviously, you can hear my dog. This is, recorded at home. Sorry, guys, it's because of NCO and the COVID. Let me continue. Because we have gone through our personal experiences, we can recognize right now, what our challenges are and be able to overcome our challenges. That's the advantage that we both have. For those who've gone through NLP training, for those who've gone through the basic training and the master's training. And the training itself for either doing basic NLP is actually creation of awareness of who we are and how we can actually deal with the blocks that we are faced right now. So you've already explained the root of. Now I would say, how did you actually come about to transition from where you are in retail into a coach and a trainer? Is that when you partner up, you are actually partnering up with Magenta Coachings as well in the UK
Yep.
for trainings.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting path, and as you rightly say, not all of us have a straightforward, no nonsense opportunity just to slide across the path of life and end up exactly where we want to get to. It doesn't happen that way, and even though we may aim that way, of course, it ends up being a bit more like this. So yeah, I was in retail, developing a real interest in developing my people. Which led me to reading an awful lot of self-help books, convincing myself I was reading self-help books to help the people in my team. But of course, I was taking on the learnings myself and realizing I had plenty of work to do on myself. And through that time, I was raising a young family. So I stayed in retail for quite a while. But through my NLP training, I first trained as a practitioner in 2012 after meeting Bevis Moynihan of Magenta Coaching Solutions. I met him just at a seminar on social media, of all things, and very few people I'd met actually knew what NLP was at that stage. So I suddenly found myself sitting across the table with somebody who introduced himself as an NLP trainer. So I got chatting with Bevis. He and I started a journey from that point onwards, where he trained me in the motivational maps tool, which I'm sure I'll mention a few times throughout this morning's chat, and also as I say, an NLP practitioner. However, it wasn't that I suddenly took my practitioner course and then became a coach. I went back into retail. I had to for earning a crust, as it were, and continued through the same situation with my master prac. But it's after my master practitioner course in NLP that I believed that I had the capability and awareness to become a coach in order to help people. That was the first time through my breakthrough session, delivering my breakthrough session at the end of that week, that I was able to stand up and introduce myself as a coach with a feeling of congruence behind it. And then I carried on working, doing different things, starting to pick up clients, and then I started to co-train alongside Bevis, both as a support coach to begin with. And then one day I turned up for an introductory day into NLP that Bevis was putting on, and there was a spare seat at the front because his co-trainer was having problems getting there and was not able to turn up. So he looked at me and said, well, you might as well sit there for the day. And that kind of set me off on the journey of becoming a co-trainer with Bevis, delivering practitioner courses, master practitioner courses. And then July 2018 is when I made the decision, well, wouldn't it be good, instead of being a sidekick to Bevis, that I'd actually take on the trainer's training certification and head off to Thailand. And we've continued ever since, but of course with a slightly different feeling that we are co-trainers in the true sense. We bring all our clients separately together now under the umbrella of Magenta Coaching Solutions. And it was 2 weeks ago we were able to deliver our first in-person NLP practitioner course since February because of the pandemic. We had a small group with the necessary procedures in place, and it's just wonderful to get back in the training room and seeing people start to identify these subconscious blocks, because I think many people, first of all, aren't aware they have them. Then they need to become aware that it's possible that they may have them, and then they start to discover, oh yeah, I'm aware now of what this thing is, and I now need some support to help get rid of it. So that's kind of bringing you up to date as to where I am right now.
So explain, before we dive into the topic of overcoming our subconscious blocks, explain to the listeners what actually is the subconscious.
Yeah, well, the subconscious in general, or a subconscious block. Well, so we often have this. Say again, sorry.
Let's put it widely. What a subconscious does for us, how it actually changes us, or behavior. That
Sure. We often get presented with the question in our training, what's the difference between the subconscious and the unconscious? And our response is pretty much the same thing. It is what's going on in your mind without you having to think about it. So such as, we're not now having to think about our heart pumping or our blood moving around our body or our cells regenerating. The unconscious mind takes care of that. And also in our world of NLP, we would talk about the prime directives of the unconscious mind. So it's there to protect us. It will be aware of patterns, signals, triggers that would remind us of past events. And so it does a pretty good job of just closing down our thinking when we get close to any of those to protect us, because that's its main purpose, is to keep us safe. Now that's very useful if the thing it's trying to keep us safe from will cause us actual danger. But when it's preventing us from stepping out of our comfort zone because of a negative experience in the past that caused us a level of discomfort, humiliation, or sense of failure, the unconscious mind will direct us in a different way so we don't take on those challenges. And in those situations, we find that, well, I certainly find with my clients, that when they are considering their next level within their career or their business or their relationship, just becoming the better version of themselves, they're finding themselves stuck. And it's usually a subconscious block that is preventing them from making that move. So that's the first step, is identifying where that subconscious block is, because it's unconscious, so therefore they wouldn't have been conscious of it, but up until the point until we start talking about it. So I guess a really good example that I had recently was on the practitioner course, where a lady and I were having a bit of a conversation on day 3, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I'd noticed throughout the course that she was accepting of everything we were talking about, but just seemed, frankly, just a little bit disengaged. And I spoke to her at one session, and she said, well, she said, I think I've dealt with all this. She said, I think I've been through quite a few bits of therapy and counseling and coaching. I think I'm okay, so I'm not sure why each time you're asking me to search for something, she said, there's nothing there. By day 4 and day 5, she found something. And I think that's how it goes, that actually by asking the right questions in the right situations, you realize that, we've all got, you and I will find the odd subconscious block that we were unaware of until a conversation leads you in that direction. And I'm sure you find that when you're talking with clients in your work, and I certainly do in my work, that as they're explaining stuff, my unconscious mind starts saying, maybe you should take a look at that, and it just gives you that opportunity to explore it. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, the unconscious mind.
Yeah, because I know when I sit with my client and they start talking to me and telling me what they're going through, and I'm in my mind, I'm going, oh yeah, maybe that's the one I have to face as well. Because it's often experienced is that you reflect or you mirror your client, or the client mirrors you. So it's always often you find things that, maybe this is something that I need to look at, which I'm not aware of consciously. But of course, as soon as somebody brings it up, it becomes conscious. It becomes like, a forefront in your conscious mind. And obviously you and I have had our, you've coached me as well. You've been to KL, you've trained me motivational maps, and you've also done a little bit of coaching on me. Now, listeners, one thing that coaches also have is that we also have coaches behind us. In order for us to move forward and to progress, we also need coaches. Not only the ordinary people who are not coaches, but also coaches need other coaches. So would you actually also say that the subconscious is what creates our behavior as well?
Absolutely. And it's, as you and I know, with the NLP communication model, there's a slide that when we put it up on our training, Bevis and I look at each other because we know we could probably spend 2 days with just that one slide up in order to be able to explain so much of what goes on, because it is all about the unconscious mind. So many people and clients will come to me telling me what the external event is that's causing them to behave the way they are behaving. And it's almost like that's the first step in order to help people understand what a subconscious or unconscious mind is. Because of course the external event comes in, And through our deletion, distortion, and generalization of the world that's out there, we then put it through our own filters of our mind, of our memories, our decisions we've made in the past, our personality, our parents, and everything else that comes with it. In a split second, the external event is being processed through that filter in order for it to create a state within us, which then leads to a physiology, which ultimately leads to our behavior. And by being able to demonstrate that to a client or to somebody on a training course, to allow them to at least accept that the external event is nothing more than the trigger to the behavior that they display. So therefore, going through their lives, fighting, working hard, driving to change the external world is just going to exhaust them and lead them to feeling the way they're feeling. It's far better for us to do some work on looking at what's going on with the filters, this is like the unconscious mind, because then we process the external event in a very different way, which leads to very different thinking and behavior as a result. And I think that's, if I had a moment with each client and a slide, that would probably be where I would start, just to be able to help them. Because we still smile about it. There's a guy that came on a course 2 years ago, and it took him 3 days to accept that there was such a thing as an unconscious mind. He was a lovely guy, hugely intelligent, really successful, unhappy in his business, but successful. And the concept of an unconscious mind was something that, took him 3.5 days. When during parts integration was the first time he thought, there's something else going on here that I'm not in control of, and that must be my unconscious mind. So, and that's quite common. It's quite common, isn't it? So
Yeah, it is. I'm going to ask you something a little bit personal.
Yeah.
Because you're from a corporate background, from a retail background. What personal challenges and personal blocks did you experience? Because when you transition from a fully employed, getting your pay and salary and everything, into something completely different, having your own business, running your own coaching business, what are your personal challenges that you were faced with? What are your unconscious blocks?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well, just to backtrack a little bit when you're talking about coaches needing coaches. Something we've started doing recently is to put together build a community of coaches around us, people who've been through our training, because there's a lot of people who are on the journey that I've now been through, in that they are still employed and wanting to transition to full-time coach. So it's great that you've asked that question, because it's a lot of what I talk about with them. Because I do a lot of coaching and training of other coaches or people who have an aspiration to become a coach. And on a personal level, then yes, I worked in retail up until I was 40. I know you probably think I look 40 now, but it was some time ago. So and I've led a hard life, but it's I reached that point and looked around and just thought, I've got everything I need here. My team are working brilliantly. I'm getting great results. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and they're doing it because they want to. They're not doing it because I've told them to do it. And I was really proud. And then I realized I was really bored, and I had no desire to move on from that point within retail. So I made that decision that I needed to make some changes. And with that came letting go of the salary, as you've mentioned, and then facing a few years of financial difficulty, and being open and accepting that it will take its time. It will be one step at a time. But of course, then that's when you face the other challenges that we all have inside us, such as, am I good enough? Will people listen to me? Can I actually get to a stage where I can help people make change and then charge them for it? So you go through all those different stages until you reach a certain point. And as I mentioned during my master practitioner course, when I was doing the breakthrough session, is the first time I felt genuine as a coach. It still took me some time after that to then get my first paying clients on board. And I remember my first client paid me 20 quid. And and that was the best 20 quid I'd ever earned at that stage. I remember sitting in the car just looking at it, because it wasn't the amount, it was what it represented, that somebody had paid me to help them in their journey, and it just built from there. And of course, whenever you build your own business, you become 100% involved in it, and at times over the years that has been a challenge, because it's constantly in your mind. I reached a point probably around the time we met 2 years ago, where I started to accept that what I did wasn't a job. What I did was what I did, and people sort of recompensed me by paying me. And that's how I feel now. It's speaking with you this morning, working with people throughout today, the masterclass we're both going to be on, working through the night next week, a couple of weeks' time in Australia, being able to talk to people around the world. It's not work anymore. It's not work. I do it because I love doing it. I love helping people. Yesterday I worked with somebody online and was able to do an NLP technique parts integration, that just presented itself in front of me, and I thought, well, is this going to work online? And once the two parts joined and came back together, the release of emotion I could see in my client sent shivers up my spine, and that wonderful feeling. That I don't call that a job. I call that just what I do, and thankfully some people pay me for it as well. So
That's a gratifying job to have. That's why you and I are both doing what we do, because we love what we do. And
absolutely.
it's basically accepting who you are, embracing your fear, facing your fear, and accepting what gifts you have, what you're good at. So if you have a tip for the listeners out there, what would you actually tell them on how to overcome their subconscious or unconscious blocks?
I think you've already mentioned it, and I'll emphasise it, is to ensure that you're speaking to a coach, even if you are a coach, or a therapist, to be able to get somebody to help you ask those difficult questions to help you get to what could be the nub of the situation. And once you've got there, people like ourselves trained in NLP, and various other tools can help you use the right tool to let go of that subconscious block. Now, whether that be, mention a few, the deepest one we both know, which is timeline therapy, parts integration I've already mentioned, letting go of a limiting belief using submodalities. So these are all techniques that can be used to help people let go of some of those subconscious blocks. But it all starts with that conversation, to be able to have a level of self-exploration that's prompted by a coach or a therapist to help you find that solution. And also be prepared to be vulnerable, be prepared to be open and honest. I still spend time with my good friend Bevis, who I have utmost respect for as a coach. We will have conversations that will uncover something, and often it's over lunch, often it's over a beer at the end of the day, or during a course. And it goes both ways. I'm feeling open enough to say, do you know what? I feel I'm stuck here. I have a limiting belief around something, or I feel that I'm not comfortable in this situation. Do you mind sitting down and having a chat about it? And because we both know that there's an opportunity to explore. So be curious, be vulnerable, ensure you've got somebody that you've got in good rapport with to have that conversation with. And particularly if you're talking with somebody who then has the training, the skills, and the ability to use some of the therapeutic techniques that you and I are very aware of, to be able to let go of those subconscious blocks. Now, It doesn't mean to say that it's not a case of being fixed. It never is with coaching. It's a case of being able to let go in order to take some steps forward. And as you take some steps forward, doing and being the things that you didn't think you could be, you will probably find some more. So it's a continuous journey. And I certainly think that for myself, and I'm sure you do, that actually the difference is, of course, now we have the awareness to say, I might need some help with that.
True. Would you actually, in just now when you were talking, you were telling me about, or you're telling the listeners about parts integration. Explain briefly what parts integration is, because you and I both know what it is. So explain briefly what it is and what you can achieve out of the parts integration once it's joined together.
Sure. I mean, often we'll hear conversationally, and all the listeners will be aware, they've maybe even doing it themselves, that they'll hear people say, you know, part of me would love to be able to get up on stage and just deliver a speech, but part of me is so nervous about it, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. Part of me thinks that I want to do this, and part of me thinks that. So you'll hear it in language, just people saying that there's an inner conflict that's going on between these parts. So the process of parts integration is identifying parts that are holding people back, that at some point have become separate to the point where they're causing a block for the client. So once we've discovered what those parts are that's holding the client back, the process is positioning the client with hands out, palms up, so that we can then identify which part is which on which hand. And often the client will then unconsciously or subconsciously know which is the unwanted part. And once we identify that, we can work on that side, and we'll use a technique which, along with many NLP techniques, has a fancy name of hierarchy of ideas, which during our training I had to look up numerous of times because I thought it must be something complicated, but clearly it isn't. So the process of chunking up to find the higher purpose of that part. And once we identify what that higher purpose is, so for example, yesterday I was working with a client who said that this part represented them being strong and professional, and as we were chunking up, we got to peace and joy. So you know, the highest intention of that part was peace and joy. We then looked at the other side, and the other side represented being out in nature and carefree and relaxed. And it didn't take much to chunk up to peace and joy on that side. So now we've got the two parts at their highest level of consciousness or their higher purpose. And funnily enough, it's the same. And then the process through language is bringing the two parts together, integrating them and bringing them back as a whole. And we've both seen it numerous times that the shift in the client is huge. That energy of bringing them back together so that they can make a congruent decision based on those two separate parts, because now they're whole again.
Yeah. So you say that parts integration is basically a conversation with your conscious and your unconscious mind, so that they're in agreement with each other to bring the wholeness back into the person or the client that you are with.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there are a lot more modalities. As you said, there's submodalities in NLP, there's timeline therapy for an even deeper shift for an individual when you go through it, and breakthrough sessions. Now, in Malaysia, breakthrough sessions can go for 48 hours. And it can be very, very intense and very tiring for both the coach as well as the client. Now, would you agree that actually you did say it, you mentioned earlier that programming, all of us are programmed at a very young age, sometimes maybe even in the womb, because we can actually start hearing conversations from the mother or from the outside world, or mother having conversations with people that will start to influence the embryo in the womb. Obviously, as you come out, you will hear other stuff and other people influence you. So it's also because about the background, how you've been brought up, the parents that that have brought you up, as well as the environment that you actually growing up in. The Western way of growing up is different from the the Eastern way of growing up. We are very, very different in that sense. Apart from the ocean, um,
Mhm.
we have cultural differences in how we do things. Um, and the thing is that our fears or our, how should I say, limitation only comes up when we are transitioning in life,
Mm.
when we have something new that we have to face. Like for you would be transitioning from an employed full-time employee into a business owner. So the trepidation that you would feel from getting money all every month, monthly income, to basically I have to earn my own money. So there must be some fear, and of course you would have to think once, twice, three times, and you've got, of course, at that time a young family that you have to take care of.
Mhm.
Um, what would you suggest to people who are experiencing limiting beliefs, or when they're experiencing fear or phobias? What would you actually um, advise people, or rather in your session, to overcome the blocks that they have? What techniques will you actually apply?
Mhm. Um,
And let's put it another way. And before you even start your session, what do you
yes.
you know what do you actually do
Yeah.
first?
We Well, as I said right at the beginning, my style of coaching is very much, as you say, talking before any techniques. You and I both know you don't meet someone and then 10 minutes later start a timeline therapy session. That would just be a bit odd for you and the client. One part of NLP that's just, for me, I use constantly, and we all do, but I find it fascinating, is the linguistic part, the language. So how your client represents the world through their language gives you so many clues as to what techniques might be most useful further down the line. So just to mention those techniques, so I'll be thinking to myself, do I need to do a limiting belief change using submodalities? If we're going through a full breakthrough, undoubtedly I'll be using timeline therapy throughout that stage. So that's almost like a given with a big session. And parts integration, as we've mentioned. And if there is a phobia there, then we both know there's the fast phobia model that we can use to help clients overcome that old pattern of a phobia. But to take it right back to your question and the early stages, um, what I'm looking for, I think, more than anything else in my client's language, is, are they using a lot of away from language, or are they using towards language? To explain what that is for everybody listening. So, and you've mentioned about my transition from salaried work into full-time self-employed work. The transition from me from away from and towards was, I was thinking all the time in an away from style, because I was thinking, I want to avoid not having any money. I want to avoid the fact that I might be in debt. I want to make sure that I earn at least as much as what I was earning when I was in employment.
You're running
So I was so I was constantly on that. So this is my fear. I was constantly yo-yoing away, feeling comfortable, and then suddenly going back again. So I was going to and from the away from here. So the transition for me, as I mentioned in Thailand, was to then turn and look towards what I wanted.
Mhm.
And once I started planning on what I wanted in my life, the opportunities that self-employed work brings to you, the limitless possibilities of that, to be able to travel, to be able to be unrestricted by being part of a bigger organization, to do the work that I wanted to do, and all these started to form parts of my goal. So everything I was wanting from that point onwards was to lead me towards something, rather than worrying about what I was fearing the other way. So I'm listening to that in my client. And I say we because we use it on the training as well as in my coaching as well. We use this all the time now. And to demonstrate it, we get people up on their feet, and because last 2 weeks ago, we had a highly kinesthetic group, so people are very much more in touch with their feelings and actually getting up and doing things. So we took them outside to a beautiful autumn September afternoon, and we stood them looking at the wall of the training centre, and we asked them to imagine that wall as being the wall of, well, I'm perhaps going to use the language we used on the day, but the wall of bad things. Let's put it that way. So we're looking at the wall of bad things, whatever your bad things is, whether it's debt, bad relationships, poor health, weight, whatever it is. And we asked people to take a few steps towards the wall and ask them how they were feeling. And then we got words like uncomfortable, disgusted, really unhappy. Then we asked them to move away, still looking at the wall, but move away. And then they started telling us that they were feeling more comfortable, happier. And then we asked them to physically turn around, so the wall was behind them. And just so happened, we had an apple tree in front of us. So we nicknamed it the apple tree of plenty, just keeping the humour going. So we said, as you look at the apple tree of plenty, what do you think and what do you see? Opportunity, endless opportunity. And we asked people to take a step or two towards the apple tree of plenty. And then we saw the plum tree of prosperity in the distance, and so on. So it was a compelling move forward. So once people are using that language and understand it, then if you hear, yeah, but I'm not sure I'd be able to do it, there's a limiting belief in that you can then use a relative technique to. Or part of me really believes I can reach the apple tree of plenty, but part of me thinks that I'm not ready yet. Parts integration. I want to achieve it, but I just feel really guilty for the people that I'm going to leave behind. Maybe a bit of timeline therapy in there. So that initial part of helping the client explore what's holding them back leads you to the relevant technique that you'll be using further down the coaching journey. So hopefully that answers your question in a long-winded way, and mentioning apple trees of plenty and so on. So.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way of explaining whether you're away from person or whether you're towards person. And to sum it up, if a person is in away from, like let's say you were always running away from, in short, poverty. You don't want to be in debt. You don't want to that kind of, you're running away from poverty, literally. That's what it means. And as you constantly run away from something, what happens is you create your fear again, and then you when you reach your goal, you eventually will be pulled back into your original state, which is poverty state.
Yeah.
But once you start and you stop to see what's ahead of you and become a towards person, and only through realization that what you're doing is running away from, and you start looking at the big picture of what you really truly want and reach for that goal, you become a towards person and running towards your goal, then that is where your sustenance is going to be, because then you will actually reach your goal and achieve more from your goal, because you're always going to be setting new goals for yourself without even having to look back about what you were before.
Yeah, and we often talk about, because what you've described there is perfect in the sense of helping the client turn to face. My example is physically was turning them to face the apple tree. But of course, as you're going that way, a lot of clients will still feel almost like a rubber band pulling them back. And so with the goal work that we do, it's about ensuring that compelling future, the goal of what you want, is so compelling, will be so fulfilling once I get there, that it's strong enough to snap that rubber band that's holding you onto the negative thinking of the past. And that's coming back to our main topic, and that's the unconscious looking to protect us. So our work is very much about dealing with those unconscious, subconscious blocks that end up representing the rubber band. So the more we can, so it's a joint work of creating the compelling vision for the future, as well as weakening the rubber band of unconscious, subconscious blocks, in order to allow the client to transition to where they want to be without their past holding them back. So it's So we're making it sound quite complex and lots of rubber bands and trees and stuff, but actually it is a wonderful journey to take people on.
It's actually not that complicated. So what the listeners, I suppose the listeners for now to take away from this is whether or not you are a person who is running away from something, or whether or not you're a person who actually looks forward to your goals and your dreams, or running towards your goals and your dreams. Which one are you? Are you the person that's running away from poverty, or are you the person running towards your goal? And that is what creates successful person or successful business or successful personal, your success in your personal life. I think we have been talking for, I can't remember what, I don't know the time. It's still recording and it's now 5:20. So we started a little bit late because I was fiddling around with some stuff. So for those who, is there anything else you would like to say before we end this recording or this session?
Just a couple of things really. One is certainly we mentioned motivational maps at the beginning, so I just want to briefly mention those. It's a tool I use, and I trained yourself in using them now. And it's a really nice 10-minute questionnaire online to help clients discover what motivates them at a deeper level. And I use it with all my coaching clients, as well as in the corporate world, in the teams that I work with, because once we're able to articulate what motivates us, we're also then able to decide or find out how well we're being fulfilled in that area at the moment. So if it's about freedom and autonomy, but we feel stuck, then that motivator is not going to be satisfied. So if we're setting goals and aspirations that increase freedom, then we're moving in the right way. If we're setting goals that don't include freedom in them, then the chances of that happening are very slim. So I use motivational maps to help me uncover what my client is really looking for. So that's a really useful tool that I use alongside our NLP techniques that we've mentioned already. And with my business, I'm looking, as we all are at the moment, of doing an awful lot more online work, as well as in person here in the UK. So I'd be delighted to make contact with anybody who wants to have a conversation about NLP techniques, subconscious blocks, or the motivational maps. So I'm here and happy to speak to anybody about that.
Yeah. If any one of the listeners would like to actually have a coaching session with Paul, whether you're in the UK or whether you're based overseas, you can actually contact Paul through his website, which is www.blacktopcoaching.com.
Correct. Yeah. There's an opportunity to contact me via the website. You can obviously find me on LinkedIn as well, or Facebook, or through yourself, Irene, for that matter. And I offer a complimentary 30-minute session with anybody who wants to get in contact with me, because as we both know, we are trained in the same techniques. We are very different people. We have our own backgrounds, and therefore we'll attract certain clients. And I'm a huge advocate of ensuring that the client picks the right coach, and actually the other way around, the coach picks the right client, because it's in order about making sure that two people are able to build rapport and trust very quickly, so we can then get on with the work in front of us. So that 30-minute complimentary session I provide is to answer questions about what's available from a technical point of view, but an opportunity. If I feel I can build rapport with somebody in 30 minutes and they with me, then we can do what we need to do. So that's why I put that in there. I'm sure you do the same sort of thing.
Yes, I do. The thing about a 30-minute consultation I need to point out is that Paul does only Zoom online 30-minute free consultation. Face-to-face would actually be a full session. Your full session one, either personal or whether it's online. I don't know how long we run it. What, an hour and a half?
Well, it as I said at the beginning, very much client-led. So I think a lot of us as coaches love the face-to-face interaction in person, but needs must. I've discovered that actually a lot of the techniques we use and my coaching is very effective online. So I've taken a lot of my coaching online now. So it just depends. If I'm doing an online session, I tend to not go longer than 90 minutes to 2 hours, just simply because it's exhausting staring at a screen for coach and client. So do more shorter sessions in person. As you've mentioned, a breakthrough session could be a whole day, 2 days if necessary, or 3-hour sessions over a period of time. Essentially, there's no one size fits all. It's adaptable.
Okay. So if anybody who wants, you do trainings as well, and you actually had a group training
Yep.
in the UK. So anybody who's based in the UK who would love to actually get a diploma or have a basic NLP training, go to Magenta Coachings. Is
Yep.
it on Magenta Coachings and Blacktop?
Well, I work as a lead trainer with Magenta Coaching. So they're Magenta Coaching Solutions, their website, magentacs.com. There's availability, some online webinars for introductory first steps in NLP, as well as the diploma. And yes, in the UK, we are now taking bookings for our January NLP practitioner course, as well as if there's anybody out there who's already done their practitioner course, we have a master practitioner course coming up next April as well. And I'm also very keen still to work with you, Irene, and come across back over to Malaysia, and when the time is right from a flying point of view, and deliver some trainings over there, which would be lovely.
Yeah, that would be great. It'd be great to see you again and have a few beers.
Well, I'll just have a Coke. You're the one who drink all the beers.
Oh, well, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, Paul, for joining this morning, your time. It's late afternoon here.
Sure.
And we'll catch up again.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
How do I stop recording now?